Hey guys, we're going to go over math review 3-2 really quickly so you can see if you got the stars for these problems. So this is the first one, dividing decimals with models. The directions say to write the equation and the quotient that is being modeled. So the very first thing I want to point your attention to was this and this. These two big blocks represent two whole numbers, or one whole number each. So that would give us a 2 as a whole number, and that would be your decimal. And then you have these four little parts, which each one of those is a tenth. So you have four of them, so it would be 2 and 4/10. That is the dividend that is being modeled. Then we know that it's being grouped together into equal groups, so that's called division. So you need a division symbol. And then you have 1, 2 groups, so that's going to be divided by 2, that's your divisor. And then since you need an equation, you need one of these guys, the equal sign, and that is equal to whatever is inside one of the groups. So you can see you have one whole and you have 2/10. So there's my quotient, 1 and 2/10. So if you have 2 and 4/10 as your dividend, you get a star. The divisor or the division symbol gets a star. The 2 as your divisor gets a star. The equal sign gets a star. And 1 and 2/10 as your quotient gets a star as well. So now the key idea, we talked about this yesterday, that the key idea for this problem is that an equation must have an equal sign. And that's going to give you a star as well if you wrote it down without me having to tell you throughout this video. And then that's a total of 6 stars for this problem. Next, we have this problem, multiplying decimals and with a model, and we want to write an equation and the product being modeled. So the first thing that I see is that I have 10 right here, 10 little squares, and then I have 7 more. So that's a total of 17 hundredths. That's each little square is a hundredth. So I will write that like this. And then if I look at the next group, I also have 3 and then 10, that's 13. And then one more, that's 14, 15, 16, 17. So you can see I have another group of 17 hundredths. And you can see that with the colors that there is 4 groups. That means that I'm going to multiply that 17 hundredths times 4. And the answer is going to give me, the product is going to give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6/10 plus these little guys right here, which is 8 hundredths. So it would be a 6 in the 10th place and an 8 in the 100th place. So that means that you have a star for 17 hundredths, a star for the multiplication symbol, a star for the 4, a star for the equal sign, and a star for your product, which is 68 hundredths. Okay, and then the key idea is the same thing as the other model problem that we had. Equations must have an equal sign, and that gives you a star as well. So a total number of 6 stars for these problems as well is what you needed if you got all the stars. Okay, the next thing that we had is the dividing decimals using the algorithm. So the first thing that we need to know is which number goes inside the division bracket whenever we rewrite it like this. And that's going to be the first number. The first number is called dividend. So in this case, the dividend is 4 and 86 hundredths. And we're going to be dividing it by a 9 as your divisor. So each one of those would get a star like you see here. And if you did that, then the next step would be to move the decimal straight up to the quotient. So that's a star if you did that movement right there. And then you can start dividing. 9 cannot go into 4, so we'll put a 0 up there in the quotient. And then that's going to give you a star. And then you will move on to the next number. So now it's not just 4, but it's now 48. 9 goes into 48 5 times. That's a star if you have the 5 in the quotient in the 10th place, and then you have to subtract 45 because that's what 9 times 5 is. So if we subtract 48 minus 45, that will give you a star because that is the correct multiple, and then you will get a remainder of 3. So the next step is to bring down the 6. So now when you have the 3 as the remainder and you put a 6 right behind it, you end up with 36. So 9 goes into 36 exactly 4 times. So the 4 goes in the quotient, and that's going to give you a star if you have that 4 in the hundredths place. And then you say that 9 times 4 is 36, so you have to subtract 36. And that's a star. So now you have a remainder of 0. And then the next thing is the key idea. The key idea, we talked about it in class as well yesterday, and that was move the decimal point straight up. If you have that key idea on your paper right now, without me having to tell you, then give yourself a red star for that. That's a total of 9 stars in this problem. Make sure 4, 3, 7, 8, 9. Yep. And we'll move on to the last problem. The last problem is also multiplying decimals, but this time with the algorithm also. So in this case, we're going to rewrite the problem, and we're going to write it as if it were just whole numbers. Remember, we use the number that has the most digits at the top. So if you rewrite it like this, then you would get a star for that. We're rewriting it just as if they were whole numbers. Remember, we forget about the decimal. We don't care where the decimal goes. That's only whenever we subtract and we add. Decimals is whenever we line them up. Right now, we're not adding or subtracting, we're multiplying. So we don't care about the decimal, we forget about it. And then we start multiplying. So 9 times 8, 8 is the first number that I have to multiply. So 8 times 4, that gives me 32. So I'll put the 2 and I'll carry the 3. 8 times 7 gives me 56, plus 3, this gives me 59. So I'll put the 5 on the top, carry the 5. I'll put the 9 down, and then the 3 that I already added, I'm going to cross it out. And the last thing that I have to multiply is 8 times 1, which is 8. Plus the 5 on the top gives me 13. So I'll put that down and cross over the 5. Now you remember, hopefully, that these numbers right here, 9392, is going to give you a star if you have every one of those digits correctly for that first line. But we're not finished yet because we also have to multiply by the 9. But before we can multiply by the 9, we need a placeholder, and that's going to give you a star if you remember to put your placeholder. Now all we have to do is multiply by the 9. 9 times 4 is 36. There's a 6. I'm going to carry the 3. 9 times 7 gives me 63, plus the 3 gives me 66. So I'll put a 6 and I'll carry the other 6 on the top of the 1. Now I multiply 9 times 1, and that gives me 54, plus 6 is going to give me, not 9 times 1 is 54. 9 times 1 is 9. Plus 6 gives me 15. There we go. And then we cross out the 6 because I added it already. So if you have a 15660 for the second line, or 15,660, you get a star for that. You also get a star for this plus sign right here because you're telling me what you're doing. And then we're going to add. So 2 plus 0 is 2. That would give you a star. 9 plus 6 is 15. So I'll put the 5 down, and that would give you a star. And I carry the 1 on top of the 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. Plus 6 is 10. So there needs to be a 0 for the next digit, and that's a star. Bring up the 1. So I have 1 plus 1, that's 2. Plus 5 gives me 7. That's a star. And then just 1 by itself. Bring it down, and that's a star. So I have 17,052 is my answer. However, now I need to go back and look at these two guys right there, the decimal points. So the decimal points, now I need to take care of them. It was here and there. So if you do your bubble strategy, you can have one bubble for each factor and one bubble for the product. In the first bubble, we have two numbers that are behind the decimal, so the bubble needs to have a 2 in it. In the second factor, you only have, that gives you a star right there, if you have that bubble with a 2. In the second factor, you only have one number, which is the 8. So that one number, one digit, is the one that we count, and we put it inside the bubble. And that's a star if you have that bubble filled out correctly. And then we're going to put the two bubbles together, 2 plus 1, that gives you 3. So the final bubble needs to have a 3 on there. That gives you a star. And that means that we're going to move the decimal from the end, from the right, 3 times. So that's 1, 2. Oop, I did that wrong. I need to make sure that I do that right. 3 times we said, right? So we're going to move it once, twice, 3 times. So that little swoop right there should give you a star for doing the 3 swoops. And then finally, we're going to do a decimal in that right place. It was there, I had made a mistake. So we're going to get rid of that star and that highlighted. The decimal point gives you a star, and that should be between the 7 and the 0, because it should be 3 decimal places that you move in your product. So that gives you a star as well. Okay? The key idea is, if you remember from last time, use the bubble strategy to place the decimal point on the product. So that's going to give you a star if you have that key idea. So if you add up all the stars in this problem, you will end up with a total of 16 stars if you have all of them. Okay, so now it's time for you to do your reflection. One thing that you did right and one thing that you did wrong. And I want you to use this statement right here, this sentence starter. I want you to start with, today I learned that, tell me what you learned, and then I want you to tell me, but I already knew that blank. So in other words, something that you need to improve on for tomorrow, something that you learned, but you already knew something else, which means you got it right, so something that you did well on. So the first thing is something that you need to improve on. The second thing is what you already knew is something that you did well on. Okay, and then finally we'll do the addition, the quick mental math. There was 16 on the last problem, 9 on the second to the last problem, and then 6 stars in each one of the first 2 problems. So if you look at this first column, you have 16 with a 6, another 6, and another 6. So 3 times 6, we know that's 18, and that 9 can be changed to a 10. So if we add the 18 plus the 10, that gives you 28. So 28 plus 2, 28 carry the 2, 2 plus 1 gives you 3. So you end up with 38. But if you remember, we changed the 9 to a 10, so we got to take 1 away. So the mental math will give you a total of 37 stars for this math review. If count the number of stars that you have, if you ended up with 37 of them, then that means you did perfect. You did a perfect score. If you did less than 37, then hopefully tomorrow you can improve on the number of stars that you got, and you can eventually get to 37 stars. All right, well, good job today, and go ahead and turn in your spirals if you're finished with your reflection and you have a total number of stars at the very top of your paper by your math review title. Thanks for watching.